You finally get the director title. So you buy the luxury watch and the tailored suits, just to fit into the executive boardroom. But every night, you stare at the ceiling, wondering why a massive salary feels like you are drowning in quicksand. That's not a cash flow problem. That's not a budgeting failure. That is a precision psychological trap, built into the architecture of corporate culture itself. And it is specifically engineered to extract wealth from the men who earn the most of it. Here is the brutal diagnostic. The same professional environment that rewarded you with that title is now silently billing you for the privilege of keeping it. You didn't wake up one morning and decide to hemorrhage capital. It happened incrementally. A $12,000 watch because a senior VP wore one in a client meeting. A $6,000 suit because the conference room has a certain visual standard. A car lease that costs $1,800 a month because showing up in something modest felt professionally dangerous. None of these felt like weakness. They felt like strategy. That's the trap's first layer. It disguises consumption as investment. It tells your executive brain that visibility is leverage. And in certain rooms, it genuinely is. Which makes the lie almost impossible to detect. But here's the behavioral diagnostic no one in your organization will ever give you. You are not building status. You are renting it. Every single month. On a depreciating asset ledger that has no exit ramp. The corporate culture doesn't announce this openly. It operates through unspoken visual cues. Who gets invited to the partner dinner? Who gets pulled into the leadership offsite? Whose opinion lands with weight in a boardroom? And somewhere between your first promotion and your director title, you internalized a dangerous equation. Looking wealthy equals being credible. And being credible equals being safe. That equation is costing you $300,000 to $500,000 in compounding capital destruction over a decade. Conservatively. Let's name this precisely. What you are experiencing is what behavioral economists call performative solvency syndrome. The compulsive need to project the financial image of success, while silently eroding the actual balance sheet that would produce it. It is not impulsive spending. It is not lifestyle inflation in the traditional sense. It is a sophisticated psychological response to a real professional threat. And it operates in three distinct escalation layers. The first is the entry tax. The moment you cross into director or VP level territory, there's an invisible entry fee. It's not written in your offer letter. Nobody in HR discusses it. But your peer cohort enforces it with brutal social precision. The watch, the wardrobe, the vehicle. Combined, a newly promoted director in a major US metro typically absorbs between $40,000 and $80,000 in status signaling expenditure within the first 18 months of a senior promotion. Not because they chose to, because the social consequence of not doing so felt professionally catastrophic. The second is the maintenance burn. This is where the math becomes genuinely destructive. These aren't one-time purchases. They're recurring obligations. Lease renewals. Wardrobe refreshes every season. Business dinners at restaurants where an entree costs $95. Because the wrong restaurant choice signals the wrong income bracket. A man earning $320,000 annually in total compensation. Maintaining a director-level visible lifestyle in cities like New York, Chicago, or San Francisco is routinely deploying $85,000 to $110,000 per year in what I call status overhead. Spending that generates zero equity, zero yield, and zero compounding return. Run that forward at a 9% average compounding rate. And that annual $95,000 in status overhead, redirected into a properly structured investment vehicle over 15 years, becomes approximately $3,200,000. Not theoretical. Arithmetic. The third is the identity lock. This is the most dangerous layer because it is invisible to the man living inside it. After 4 or 5 years of maintaining the executive image, the spending stops feeling like a choice. It becomes identity infrastructure. Removing the watch doesn't just feel financially risky, It feels like professional self-destruction. The brain has fused the asset with the self-concept. This is exactly what the corporate consumption cycle depends on. Your fear of losing perceived status is more reliable than any contract. Here is the psychological profile of the man this destroys most efficiently. Highly intelligent, deeply self-aware, genuinely high-performing, and acutely sensitive to how he is perceived by institutional power. In other words, the system didn't catch weak men. It caught the ambitious ones. Here is where the reframe has to happen at the architectural level, not the behavioral surface. The mistake most high-earning men make when they recognize this trap is attempting willpower-based correction. They cancel one subscription. They skip one watch purchase. Then a client dinner happens, a peer makes a comment, and the identity lock snaps back into place within 60 days. Willpower doesn't defeat a structural trap. Architecture does. The institutional grade shift is this. Separate your professional visibility budget from your personal wealth architecture, permanently and structurally. Meaning, decide in advance, with a hard-capped annual figure, exactly what your professional image costs. Not emotionally. Analytically. Build a dedicated professional visibility allocation. Say, $18,000 to $22,000 per year for wardrobe, grooming, and client-facing experiences. Hard ceiling. Non-negotiable. Everything above that ceiling routes automatically into an asset-generating structure before you have the cognitive bandwidth to justify the upgrade. A brokerage account with an automated monthly transfer. A taxable investment account. A properly structured vehicle your corporate attorneys can actually work with. The key is automation. Because the executive brain, under social pressure, cannot be trusted to make that capital allocation decision in the moment. The identity lock is too strong. What you are building is a visibility firewall. A clear, pre-committed boundary between the cost of projecting success and the actual mechanics of building it. The men who sustain real executive wealth long-term don't spend less on image arbitrarily. They spend with a ceiling, and they protect everything above it with structural automation. One more diagnostic before this closes. The executives in your organization who actually have generational wealth. You've noticed they don't chase the newest status marker. They carry the same watch for a decade. They drive something understated. They stopped performing solvency years ago because they achieved it. And they achieved it precisely because they stopped funding the performance. That is not coincidence. That is the endgame of the visibility firewall, executed over time. The director title was earned. The financial freedom that should accompany it has to be architecturally protected from the very culture that gave you the title in the first place. The psychological machinery keeping you locked in status overhead at the director level doesn't exist in isolation. It feeds directly into a far more brutal institutional pressure point, the one that hits when the calendar turns, and the corporate system begins its quiet, systematic repricing of your value. Click the video on your screen right now, and let's pull back the next layer to dissect how turning 40 in corporate America triggers a specific, ruthless organizational calculus that no performance review will ever warn you about.